Hawaii. Let's talk about Hawaii and how I lived there at 18 years old. Yes, 18 years old. Now let's get my dog out of the video. So when I was in high school and everyone was planning what they wanted to do for college and they knew what schools they were going to and they were so excited about what kind of courses they were taking, I just didn't resonate with any of that, to be completely honest with you. I mean, the boyfriend I was with at the time was pressuring me to go to school. At the end of the day, like, nothing that the college had to offer, or nothing that university had to offer really excited me. None of it really made me feel like I wanted to go and I wanted to spend all that money to go, especially because I would have been paying for it myself. I would have been taking out student loans, I would have been having to pay it back and work a full-time job, and that's just something that I wasn't wanting to do for something that I wasn't passionate about. So my mom was like, well, Jasmine, you've got to do something. You can't just stay home, because at that point in my life I was really heavy into drugs and I was so lost I didn't know what to do, so my outlet was to party. And I wasn't a huge drinker, but I was really into hard drugs and smoking a lot of cigarettes and just not a good time, really dulling myself out, kind of to take away from the fact that I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, even though everyone else seemed to have it figured out. Meanwhile, no one really ever has it all figured out at that age, you know, when you're still asking permission to go to the bathroom and trying to kind of decide what you want to do for the rest of your life. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but my mom is a yoga teacher, and she has been a yoga teacher for about like 30 years almost. If you hear something weird in the background, that's my puppy playing with her ball. But anyways, and so she started looking into things for me, and she's like, well, why don't you go get your yoga teacher certification? And I'm gonna be honest, at that time I did not do yoga whatsoever, but the thought of going to either like California or something like that was like, oh, that's cool, okay. I'm not gonna lie, I was more excited going to like a really cool place than getting my yoga teacher training, because it wasn't something that I ever pursued on my own or, you know, really wanted at the time, to be honest with you. And you know, for example, like if your mom's a math teacher, it doesn't automatically mean that you're gonna love math. You know, the same goes with that. Like, just because she was a yoga teacher didn't necessarily mean that I loved yoga at the time. But again, the kind of things I was into, there's no wonder why I had no desire to do it. So originally she found this really cool place in California and she's like, all right, let's go. But then something a little better came along, and she found this resort in Hawaii. And what's really awesome too was the same place that I was getting my teacher training, I was also able to volunteer. So what I ended up doing is on my 18th birthday, I did fly out by myself and I went to the Big Island in Hawaii. And I stayed at this resort called Kalani, and I'll talk about that more, definitely, because I really think that it is an awesome place to go. Even though at the end of the day, my experience overall wasn't something that really has me drawn back to go there specifically, but it has really given me such an opening to exploring the island and really hooking up with people that I never would have met if it wasn't for that. So let's jump right into it. So I went to the Big Island and I went and stayed at this resort for a total of 4 months. So I was living in Hawaii by myself at this resort for 4 months. I volunteered for 3 and I did my yoga teacher training for 1. So this was back in 2014, I believe. It was at the resort for 1 month, which was really nice because I kind of got my feet in and I kind of just really was able to have a connection with some people instead of just doing my yoga teacher training and then just hopping right into it. It was a really nice transition, to say none the least. So I did that for a month, and then I did my yoga teacher training for a month, and the way that it worked was I think it was 5 days a week. It honestly feels like so long ago from now, so forgive me if I'm not like totally on point with all of the details here, but I'm definitely trying to relive it so I can get it out to you. So we would wake up at 6 a.m. and we would have a 2-hour practice, which was amazing. Oh my goodness. Now, take into consideration, you guys, I jumped into this yoga teacher training only doing yoga like a handful of times. I didn't regularly practice. I didn't practice for years before I went here. So never get discouraged by thinking that maybe you're not prepared enough for something or you don't have enough experience, because I'm a prime example here that you can just jump into it and end up loving it. You know, it doesn't have to be yoga, it can be anything. But anyways, and then we would have breakfast for an hour. So we would basically have 3 parts during the day. So we'd have the 2-hour practice, and then we would have breakfast, and then we would have another 2-hour practice, and then we would have dinner, and then another 2-hour practice. Now, the first 2 hours, that's when we did our yoga practice, but the other 2, we were mainly learning about the postures and about how to teach others, and you know, we were definitely doing examples too, so we were doing quite a bit of yoga throughout the entire day. I had went to a training with Troy Peak, and he was amazing. He was definitely amazing. I definitely would have recommended it. I probably paid about $5,000 overall in order to get my certification, and it was the best $5,000 that I've ever spent. The only downfall was that I was sick for like a week and a half or 2 weeks out of all of it, and yeah, so that that wasn't that fun because I kept falling asleep in class. I was so tired, I was so drained, and I was just like, I couldn't pay attention whatsoever. There's this one woman in particular who started spreading rumors around me saying that I was like a cokehead and I was doing a bunch of drugs, and that's why I was passing out in class, and I took it all for granted just because my parents paid for it. Meanwhile, I paid for the entire trip myself. I saved up $9,000 working 2 separate jobs, about I don't even know how many hour days. I was working at Tim Hortons, and then I was working at a movie theater. I would go to work at about 5 or 6 a.m. until 2 or, you know, 3 or whatever, and then I would go to my next job at 4 until midnight. And at that point, my mom was driving me everywhere, bless her soul, because that was a lot of work with her working full-time on top of that. After that, I had volunteered for another 2 months, and I was in a housekeeping department, and it was so awesome. It was such a fun time. The people you meet and the people you connect with, you know, everything is so possible if you want it to be, and this isn't something that I expected to happen whatsoever. Like, I definitely did all the work in the fact of I went to work and I paid for my whole trip, I paid for everything, but my mom put everything together for me, and I'm forever thankful for that. But I also wanted to make this video, and I feel like it's long overdue, only because I want to inspire others to tell you that there are other ways to go about living your life instead of just going to school. You don't have to go in school if you don't want to. You know, you don't have to attend college or uni if you don't feel passionate about it, because life is seriously way too short to be spending time doing something that you're not really loving, doing something that you feel like maybe you're wasting your time with, because if you feel that way, then you are. And as much as 100 or 80 years sounds like a long time, time flies by so fast, and at the end of the day, you cannot hold anyone else responsible for waking up one day and potentially really not liking where you are. You know, if you live your life for your parents or your family, anything that maybe feels like you should be pressured to go to school, maybe carry on the family legacy of like doctors or lawyers or anything like that, like, no, if you love that, then that's awesome. But if you don't, and you're kind of like me where you don't resonate with school whatsoever, then know that you don't have to go to school. There are alternate ways. Oh, here we go. And at the end of the day, I really loved being a yoga teacher. I loved it so much. And some of you may be asking, well, why don't you teach yoga? Well, when I got home, I ended up getting back into drugs and really back into a mindset that wasn't helping me thrive, it wasn't helping me grow, but divine timing is everything, and everything has brought me to this point where I no longer drink, I no longer do drugs, I don't smoke cigarettes, I don't smoke weed, I have no desire to do any of that, and now like I feel like I'm really ready to take on that title of being a yoga instructor, because I really don't feel like it would have made sense for me to be a yoga instructor and then I would have been partying or doing, like, it didn't match up for me. And sure, maybe it took a couple years down the road for me to realize that, but I just wanted to share that, you know, you don't have to go down that standard path that has been created for us to tell you, okay, once you get out of high school, you have to go to college or uni, you get a job, get a mortgage, do whatever. No, like, fly as much as you can. And my mom always told me that. She's like, before you get locked into, like, you know, a lease or your car insurance or whatever, like, try to fly as much as you can. And going to Hawaii has changed my life forever. Like, I went back a year later and ended up living with someone that I met previous to that, and it was the best couple of months of my life, and it's something that has had such a huge impact on me, and I have really left a piece of my heart there. And I just wanted to tell you that anything is possible, you know, anything at all. Like, I took off right on my 18th birthday because that was the earliest that I could go flying by myself. So if you don't feel really like you're knowing what you want to do, maybe you're far out of high school but you kind of feel a little bit lost and you're not really knowing what you're doing or where you're going, that's okay. Like, don't feel like you have to know everything at this point in your life, because you don't. And if we think like that, then a lot of the time we really do feel a little bit disappointed in ourselves, and life is way too short for you to be wasting your precious energy on that. It's not something that serves us whatsoever. What serves us is finding what we're passionate about, and sometimes that takes a little bit longer than others. And I didn't know what the heck I wanted to do at all, and then I ended up discovering veganism from a really cool friend of mine that I met in Hawaii, and that has just taken off from there. So I just wanted to share that story with you today in hopes that maybe I can inspire you to step out of the box and not be afraid to do what you want to do, even if you don't know what you want to do at that time. But don't feel pressured into having to take that standard route, because a lot of people, they're not happy with it. They don't like the school that they're going to, they don't like the courses they're taking, and they're in so much debt. And I've had so many friends that have dropped out and they just hate their lives, and to pay that much money to hate what you're doing, like, your time is so precious, your energy is so precious. Don't let that go to waste. Don't let it go to waste. And it's okay to be maybe in the in-between for a little bit. That's fine. That's totally fine. You know, there are so many adults who don't have it figured out, and we're expected to have it figured out. Okay? Half of us don't even know what we're doing, and that's totally okay. That's part of the journey, that's part of the process. So I'm going to make a separate video talking about my experience with Kalani, because my dog is just going nuts right now. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Mwah!